One of the biggest surprises of the season for me was definitely Dmitri Voronkov keeping up on that top line with Monahan and Marchenko. Can he keep doing that? Let's discuss on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, today we are doing an episode that I was going to do last week and then kept getting distracted by free agents and trades and goalie rumors and whatnot. But we're going to talk about Dmitri Voronkov, who I think was one of the biggest surprises of the season for me. I was maybe not as high on Dmitri Voronkov coming into his NHL career as you know, some of the fans were. I am happy to be wrong about that, quite frankly. I think he has been an excellent fit for this team. I think he is an extremely good complementary player, right? I don't ever think he's going to be his own, like he's never going to be the linchpin of a line, right? But he is an extremely good support player, which is always fun, right? You can't have every player be a linchpin. You've got to have support guys. You've got to have glue guys. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but I thought Dmitry Voronkov grew a lot this year, and you know, developed into honestly a shockingly good possession player. If the underlying stats are to be believed. So let's go over the basics. So Dmitry Voronkov, only his second full season, or his second season ever with the NHL. He had his rookie season last season. He had 34 points in 75 games, including 18 goals. This season, he played 73 games. Missed some time with an injury, I believe. I want to say near the beginning of the season, but I don't exactly remember. Yeah, he didn't make his season debut until November 1st. I don't remember what the injury was exactly. I feel like probably his shoulder, because that's every Blue Jacket seems to have a shoulder injury at some point. Anyway, jumped up from 34 points to 47 points in 2 fewer games played. And also, I know the plus minus is not the be all and end all, but going from a -6 to a +17, I think is it's not significant, but it's not nothing, right? I think he played a lot more at wing this season, and that really benefited him. I know that the Blue Jackets drafted him as a center, but I think he's a much more effective winger. I think, and I've talked about his skating style before, right? Like his skating style is fascinating to me because it looks like it shouldn't work, like at all. He's got maybe the wonkiest skating style of anyone on the team. And I genuinely, like, again, this is me admitting that I was wrong. Like when he first came to the NHL, when he played, I think he played 4 or 5 games in the AHL and was basically invisible in them. Got called up and stuck around, but like his skating style, I was like, there's no way this is gonna work. There's no way this is gonna work. But I don't think he's fixed his skating style. I think he has emphasized the bits that work and has basically he decided to ignore the bits that don't work, right? He's never going to be the fastest guy. He's never going to be the guy that can turn on a dime, right? He's not the smoothest skater in the world, and he's never going to be. He's never going to be the best skater on a line. But what he is he works hard, and it's like a less impactful version of what Adam Fantilli does, right? He doesn't have the finesse, he doesn't have the speed, he doesn't have the overall skill, but he does have that, like, I'm going to skate in a straight line at you, and that's your problem, right? He's just kind of, he was a really fun surprise this season. I enjoyed watching him a ton. Again, 23 goals, which I think was probably 3rd or 4th on the team in scoring. He ended up finishing 5th on the team in scoring. Didn't throw as many hits as I thought, actually. But threw enough. Threw more than he was, I want to say, 5th or 6th in terms of forwards that played more than 5 minutes. So Matthew Luhier led the way, obviously, and then Zach Aston Reese, Sean Corrali, Justin Danforth, Adam Fantilli, Cole Stillinger, and then Voronkov, right? And again, I'm not looking at Voronkov to be physical necessarily because, or I'm not looking at him to throw hits at the expense of everything else, right? Because here's the thing. If you're throwing a hit, it means you don't have the puck. And for a shocking amount of Dmitri Voronkov's ice time this season, he or one of his teammates or one of his line mates had the puck, right? I do think that Voronkov probably benefited massively from playing on the lines that he did, right? Like he played let me see if I can pull it up real quick, but like he played basically the entire season with Kirill Marchenko and then one of Monahan or Fantilli in center. Again, I'm gonna just use I'm on moneypuck.com, by the way, which is another one of those sites that I like to use in terms of minutes. He played 370 minutes with Fantilli and Marchenko, and then he played another 293 minutes with Monahan and Marchenko. And then you have to go all the way down to he played 80 minutes with Stillinger and Olivier, which I like that as a line concept. I know someone, one of my wonderful everyday is Stanley, I think it was like, wow, I can't believe you're disrespecting Dmitri Voronkov by saying that he's not a first line player. And like, on the one hand, I don't necessarily think he is on a contending team. I don't think he is a top line player. However, and this is where people will probably start to get mad at me, there is a Sam Bennett-like energy about him and I don't think that he does it as well as Sam Bennett yet, but it feels like there's potential there, right? For him to just be really unpleasant to play against. He's good for a bunch of goals. Like, I think he scored 14 even strength goals this season. So 9 of them were on the power play, which again, like, is not nothing. I don't know. I assume Kirill Marchenko led the Blue Jackets in power play goals and or power play points. No, Werenty probably led them in points, but I'm pretty sure Marchenko led them in power play goals. But Voronkov is certainly up there. Dmitri Voronkov led the team in power play goals with 8. Kirill Marchenko only actually scored 2 power play goals this season, which is wild considering he scored like 31 goals. Anyway, same with Adam Fantilli. 29 of his 31 goals came at even strength. Bonkers. Dmitri Voronkov with 8 power play goals on the season. So like about a third of his goals came on the power play, which is about what I would want. I think any more than that, and you're kind of you have between a third and half, I think is a reasonable place. I think any more than that, and you start to like wander into power play merchant territory. Any less than that, I think is fine. But of your 23 goals, 8 of them being on the power play, I think is absolutely fine. And again, I think this is really going to benefit him in terms of, to kind of go back to my original point here, is he is a guy that is going to be really, really, really good on the third line. I think he is a fine option to put on that first line. If he manages to keep it up, which we'll talk about in a minute, if he manages to, score 25 plus goals again next season, which, he's on pace to do that if he keeps improving, if he plays all 82. I think he was on pace for like 26 or 27 goals. And he was part of the team that forgot how to score for like 8 games in the entirety of March. So like, knock on wood, that kind of thing won't happen again, but he probably missed out on a couple of goals then, right? So if Dmitri Voronkov can keep up and, continue to be a top line player on this team, like that's great, but I think there are better options. And I guess it comes down to, and we'll talk about this in a second here, like, do you have him as a perfectly acceptable top line player, or do you have him as a really, really good third line player that is extremely unpleasant for the other team's third lines to deal with, right? And I think I lean towards the latter. So let's talk about that for in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about wonderful pistachios. You're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious. Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. They are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. I just housed an entire bag of the no shells variety. They have this like jalapeno lime flavor that is just so good. And because it's no shells, it means that I can basically just kind of open the bag and pour it into my mouth. But if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, if you love to fidget with things while you're working, perhaps the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're going to talk about a little bit more about Dmitri Voronkov because that is the topic of the day. We talked about kind of his career, like his career so far, I guess. As much as you call 2 years a career, and how surprising the season was, and how he has made his. I was going to say flaws, but that feels mean. But like, he has turned his skating from a detriment to, if not like a positive, but like a net neutral, right? Like his skating is not slowing him down the way it was a little bit in his rookie season. Again, I still don't think he's going to ever be the smartest or the fleetest of foot skater in the entire league, but he's making it work for him, right? But I want to talk a little bit more about where his like perfect role on this team is, right? Because yes, he played excellently with Marchenko and Fantilli / Monahan. We're just kind of group that together into the top line because it was basically a 50-50 split between Monahan and Fantilli on that top line. And Voronkov was there for like 500 minutes of it, which is not nothing when you consider that like last season, I believe it was like 250 minutes was the most used trio, and it was the fourth line. So playing 500 minutes on the top line is not nothing, right? And playing 500 minutes with basically the same two players is not nothing. However, Dmitri Voronkov is a really interesting player because again, he's one of those like not necessarily a Swiss Army knife type player who can play, anywhere you want in the lineup. I think he is definitely a winger, and I think he is definitely a middle six guy that could maybe play up, depending on what your depth chart looks like, right? Like right now, looking at the situation of the left wings on this team, and like there's an argument to be made that Voronkov is far and away the best left wing on this team, right? Like you could put an argument in for Boone Jenner. I don't know that I would buy it. You could put an argument in for Igor Chinikov. Like, and again, if he stays healthy, I might entertain that argument. But like Voronkov was the most effective left winger on this team. And so he gets penciled into the top six. But if you bring in, someone like a Mitch Marner, a Jason Robertson, a Nikolai Ehlers, like even if you bring in, like I saw someone today suggesting that maybe the Blue Jackets should offer a guy like Matthew Nyes, and if you bring in any of those guys, does that bump Voronkov out of his spot into the middle six, or probably most likely the third line? And there is one problem with Voronkov, and we'll talk about that in a minute, which is that he really seems to struggle if he doesn't have a Russian on his line, which is something the Blue Jackets are going to have to adapt to at some point because they can't just use that as a reason to keep him playing with a guy like Marchenko, right? But that being said, I think that if you have a guy that is a solid B+ on the top line, or as an A+ on the third line, like to me that feels easy in terms of spreading the wealth, right? Like the Blue Jackets had a little bit of a problem with depth this year. I guess you could also make an argument that James Van Riemsdyk was like a top 2 left wing for this team, which I did not have on my bingo card when we signed him at the beginning of the season. But he is a guy that was very effective and again took advantage of a team that had a weakness in left wing, right? And I think that's the big target this offseason is getting a left winger. I know that everyone's saying the Blue Jackets didn't have problems scoring. They need to focus on defense and goaltending. They can do all three. They can go out and get one of each if they want. I think if they're going to get a forward, they need to get a left wing, and I think they know that. And I think that that's definitely high on their list of things. And again, if you end up moving a guy like Chinikov in a trade, then keeping Dmitri Voronkov around becomes that much more important, especially if, again, depending on what happens with your left wings. Because there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of players that have been linked to the Blue Jackets, or people talking about how the Blue Jackets should acquire them. Many of them I've talked about on this very show, right? But is it worth putting for, like, basically my argument here is, do you risk taking Voronkov away from Marchenko, putting him on that third line where, again, I really do believe he can be like a Bennett type player. And maybe that, again, people might get mad at me about that because I think Bennett is a lot more physical. And I think he talks a lot more smack than Dmitry Voronkov by dint of having, the English to do that. But I think that there's a similar thing there, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that the Blue Jackets don't need to go out and acquire Sam Bennett because they've got Sam Bennett at home, but I think that Voronkov has the potential to be that kind of player is a perfectly fine regular season player. Dmitry Voronkov has the energy of someone that will turn it on in the playoffs, and I have no basis for that. I have no reasoning for that. Obviously, he hasn't played any NHL playoffs yet. Or AHL playoffs, indeed. I am just pulling up his Elite Prospect page to see what his playoff numbers are like over in the KHL. He played for 24 playoff games in the KHL his last season there and had 12 points, including 8 goals. So 8 goals in 24 games, about a goal every third game. That feels pretty good to me. In total, he's got about 25 playoff points in about 50 playoff games. So he's about half a point a game in the playoffs, which I feel fine with. I feel more than fine with, actually. I think, again, Dmitry Voronkov is a guy that hopefully can be a playoff performer. And again, I have no real basis of this, just to kind of vibe. But what is 50% of hockey analysis if not just vibes, right? So that's kind of where I feel about that. And again, he's a guy that if you put him on the third line all season, and again, he feels like a guy that he's doing all of this as well, playing on average. He played an average of under 17 minutes this season. His career average for the Blue Jackets is just over 15 minutes a game, and he scored 23 goals in, again, less than 17 minutes of ice time this season on average. Some games he played more, some games he played less. That's how averages work. Duh. Is he a guy that you give more ice time to and hope that he can unlock? Or is he a guy that you're like, wow, we can get potentially 25 goals out of, 16 to 17 minutes a night out of this guy. We should just do that and see what happens. And again, if he's only playing that much in the regular season, can he then turn it on in the playoffs? I think a lot about that Brian Bickle playoff run that he had in, was it 2013, I want to say, where he just turned into an absolute wrecking ball for an entire season, got a huge contract off the back of it, and then never lived up to said contract. It was either 2013 or potentially 2015. I don't remember. Back when the Blackhawks were doing their thing. And again, is there a Brian Bickle type player in Voronkov? I think Voronkov is better than Bickle, but I do think that there's a case that Voronkov has that playoff mode that we haven't seen yet, obviously. And I would have been really, really interested to see how he would have done had the Blue Jackets made the playoffs this season. So that's something to kind of not keep an eye out for necessarily, but something to ponder. The other thing is Dmitry Voronkov needs a new contract. What is that contract going to look like? Let's discuss in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking all about Dmitry Voronkov, and we're about to discuss his brand new contract that he hasn't signed yet, but we're going to look at what that contract could look like. Now, Evolving Hockey has this really fun projection tool that they've built that basically looks at how likely each new contract is, or they look at the most likely contract and then kind of extrapolate from that. So, they go from all the way for Dmitry Voronkov, for example, they looked at all of the different ways this could go and how likely it is for things to happen. And they went all the way from a 1 year, $3.1 million contract to a 8-year, $6.8 million contract. The most likely one that they landed on, and I don't know how they, I don't know how they do the math for this. Again, I know just enough about advanced stats to be dangerous, but they're projecting a 2-year, $3.8 million contract. So, or, it'll be $3.8 million a year for 2 years. That's their most likely, but that's still only a 25% likelihood. I think that Voronkov will probably sign for a little bit more, both in term and AAV. But here's the thing: is I feel like the Blue Jackets have to be at least a little bit cognizant of what's coming up. Right? It's very easy to say we've got $40 million in cap space. The cap is going up another 11 million over the next 2 years, right? It's going to be 110 million by the end of 27, 28, I feel like. And it's really easy to just kind of kick the can down the road. If the Blue Jackets want to build sustainably, I think they have to be kind of semi-cognizant of that. And by that, I mean not necessarily that they shouldn't sign Voronkov long-term, but I think what would be prudent would be if they decided, okay, well, in 2 years' time, for example, they're going to have to re-sign Kirill Marchenko, Kent Johnson, Luka Del Blues is going to be coming off his ELC. If he makes the jump, then that's going to be a big thing. Then Dmitri is coming off of his ELC. If you sign Dmitri Voronkov to a 2-year contract, that's a big, stressful offseason, right? In the same way that next year, Cole Sillinger needs a new contract, Adam Fantilli needs a new contract, etc., right? Now, I will say in a couple of years, Elvis Merzlikins' money comes off the books. So that'll be $5.4 million that they have extra, but, they're going to be paying money for players they're never going to stop paying money for players, right? So it is just kind of circular. So I do wonder if they go for 3 to 4 years in the hope of going, well, in 2 years, we're going to have to do arguably 3 really important contract negotiations in Marchenko, Johnson, and Matejchuk. Do we want to add a potential 4th one there in Voronkov? Or do we want to give him an extra year now? And then at the end of the 27-28 season, where they currently don't have any big that's a lie. They have one big negotiation to do then. Zach Werenski's contract is going to be up at the end of the 27-28 season. But as of right now, that's the only one, So do they want to kick that down the road, give him an extra year, a little bit of extra term, and go from there? But it becomes like, okay, well, what do you give him, right? Because Dmitri Voronkov finished below Kirill Marchenko and Kent Johnson in scoring this season. Kent Johnson's contract is just an insanely good one, by the way. 3 years at 1.8 million, and he had 20 goals this season and was 3rd or 4th on the team in scoring. Wild. But he probably falls somewhere in between those two players, right? He's going to get more than Johnson, I think, because Don Waddell is more familiar with him. He's probably not going to get as much as Kirill Marchenko, or he shouldn't get as much as Kirill Marchenko, unless you want to sign him long-term now, take that risk. And, sign him for, 6x8 or whatever, and hope that the cap keeps going up enough to make that, even if it's not a great deal, to make it a survivable deal, let's say. I don't think that giving him $6 million is going to turn him into the next Severson. I do think that Don Waddell will likely shy away from that. I do think he will give him a shorter term deal, but if they turn around and they're like, okay, well, yeah, let's give him $4 million for the next 3 years. That to me feels very palatable. The contract projection for a 3-year deal for Voronkov is $4.6 million. But feels a little bit high to me. Again, he's in a weird place. If he's had 2 quite good seasons, his agents are probably loving the position that he's in. Coming off of, again, a 23 goal season, really kind of emerged as one of the good young players on this team, has really good rapport with a guy like Marchenko, played very well with Monahan when he was in the lineup, played very well with Fantilli when he was in the lineup, or when they were on the same line, I should say. does he think that he can get more? Like, again, it's a case of playing the market, right? Does he sign for 2 years and hope that at the end of those 2 years, he'll be 26? He will also be a UFA, I believe. His UFA season. Oh, no. So, okay, here's the thing. His UFA hits at the end of 27, 28. So maybe they do want to sign him for 2 years. Instead of walking him all the way to UFA, give him an extra 2 years. Give him this year and next year. And at the end of that, he'll still be an RFA. And that's when you try and lock him up long term. Like, again, this is all the math that I'm glad that I don't have to sit here and work out, and I'm glad that they pay, like, the teams pay people to do this, and figure out, like, okay, this guy's a UFA here. This is all of the contracts that we have to do at this time. So it comes down to, do you want to kick the can down the road and walk him right to UFA and hope that he likes it here enough that he wants to stay? Do you sign him for 2 years and add him to that list of guys that you've got to renegotiate at the end of the 26-27 season in Marchenko, Voronkov, Marchenko, Johnson, and Matejchuk? Like, again, it's the first line versus third line debate, right? Like, there's no wrong answer here necessarily. It really just depends on how you feel about this player. And again, there's a world where they lock him up slightly longer. Like, I could see him signing for 4 years, maybe. I think, based on my admittedly pretty limited experience of having Don Waddell as my GM, I think he probably leans more towards that 2-year contract to walk him basically right up to the year before being a UFA, and then going from there. Like, we've seen before that it doesn't seem to bother Don Waddell when he has a long to-do list. Look at the to-do list that he had last summer, right? It was, okay, I'm here, I need a new coach. I've got 4 core pieces, arguably, that need extending. Like, free agency is coming around the corner. Oh, now I have to try and rebuild a roster around losing a player horribly and suddenly that no one expected was coming, right? Like, he doesn't shy away from having a long to-do list. So I think that, again, I don't know how Evolving Hockey calculates these things, but that 2-year, $3.8 million deal, I would probably sign that and be like, yep, no, we're done. That's a problem for another day. It's just a shade under Marchenko. But again, I feel like Marchenko, like the Johnson contract, is like, next season, it already looks pretty good. Next season, it's going to look even better, I think. Like, paying under $4 million for a player that is basically a point a game and has 30 goals. It's a great deal, right? So Dmitri Voronkov, probably, 3.8 is about the spot. I think it sounds a lot because of what Marchenko and Johnson are on. And they're not comparables really in a way, but that was my starting point when I looked at, like, okay, well, he's going to get more than Johnson because of how stupid Johnson's contract is. He's probably not going to get as much as Marchenko, but he might get near enough as much as Marchenko, which is great news for him. And again, I think it really illustrates how team-friendly that Marchenko contract is, because I think it's going to get even more team-friendly as we go forward. But fact of the matter is, if you can sign Dmitri Voronkov for a couple of years now, and again, like, kick the can down the road, fine with that. If you want to lock him up long-term, I'm a little bit more wary of that, especially, you look at some of the contracts that this team has now. I know that everyone loves the Olivier contract. I don't know how well that's going to age. It's $3 million is $3 million, but I do feel it very much like it's a little bit like the Pierre Engvall deal in the Islanders organization. Slightly different because of the cap increases, but we'll see how that goes. But, they've got the Severson contract that they've got to deal with. They might have the Provorov contract that's going to be huge. Like, if you can get him signed now to a, 5 or 6 year reasonable term, maybe that's the option. And then again, that's a player that you don't have to worry about going down the road. If he turns into the player that you think he's going to turn into, either it's going to be great value or it's going to be really tradable. One of the two, right? So I'm not worried about Voronkov's contract. I'm interested to know what it looks like. I think I would sign short term, but I understand if they want to go long term. And we'll we'll see how it goes. Free agency is coming up. I do feel like it's not going to be... Voronkov is probably not going to be like the last contract to be signed, but I do think he's probably going to... It's going to be an August extension, I feel like. He'll get his qualifying offer on July 1st, which we'll do a little primer on qualifying offers when it's that season, when that rolls around. But I do think this is going to be okay, he hasn't signed yet, Oh, there we go, he signed. And it's probably going to be like mid-August when nothing else is happening and we all jump on it because it's the first news that we've had in 3 weeks. But Voronkov, great player. I think if you limit his minutes, he's going to be even better. Or keep limiting his minutes, I should say. He's not a player that needs to play, 20 minutes a night. Look what he does with 17. Keep it at that. And he's going to be great. You just have to figure out how to keep him consistent away from Kirill Marchenko. Not that I'm suggesting he's a Marchenko merchant, but I think he understands more English than I think a lot of people say he does. All of the talk is, Voronkov doesn't speak English. Voronkov doesn't speak English. Like, he might not speak it, but I bet he understands it. But having someone who speaks your native language to you, your first language to you, I think is North Americans and people who have English for a first language. This is, I said North Americans and realize that I am not innocent of this as well. Like, the people who speak English as their first language, I think, don't realize what it's like to live somewhere where very few people speak your native language fluently, right? So I understand him kind of clinging to Marchenko, but I do think as his English improves, I think we're going to see him flourish away from Marchenko as he's able to communicate a little bit more with other players. So that's that. That's what I've got for today. Tomorrow, I think what we're going to do is talk about let's talk about Sam Bennett tomorrow. He is the main character of the day over on all of the hockey news. Let's talk about, could the Blue Jackets sign him? Should the Blue Jackets sign him? Is he just going to stay in Florida for cheaper? Like, all of that stuff we'll talk about tomorrow on Locked On Blue Jackets. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show over on Blue Sky now at LO-Blue Jackets. Thank you for listening. Make it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Once again, tomorrow we're going to talk about all things Sam Bennett. And until then, make sure you stay locked on.